Thank you. You may all have your seat. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all here today. We are delighted. Oh, yes. Before I continue, there is a CARICOM song that needs to be played. You may all stand. Those gone before, from many distant lands, our forefathers came, some seeking adventure, some bound in chains, through battles waged and fought, through victory and pain. By test of their courage, our freedom was gained. In homage to those gone before us, the heroes of lands in the sun, we vow to join hands and to focus on building one Caribbean. Raise your voices high, sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong, till our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we belong. Sound the victory drum for CARICOM. The great and diverse be our ethnicities. The bonds that unite us are stronger than these. We dine, we pray, we love, we dance and we play. We relate to each other, rest in your way. Today as a people united as one, determined and steadfast we stand. We look to a brand new horizon, the future not firmly in our hands. Raise your voices high and sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong, till our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we belong. Sound the victory drum for CARICOM. Hele, hele, bravo, open you sing CARICOM. Leve, leve, bravo, nephew, CARICOM. Tabu, ya tabu, bravo, open you sing CARICOM. Leve, leve, bravo. Raise your voices high and sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong, till our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we belong. You may all have your seat now. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here today. We are delighted to have you with us to gain insight into the advancement of CSME. My name is Lorian Lewis, and I will be your host. First and foremost, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished guest, Michelle Small Bartley, who is the Deputy Program Manager for Youth Development, as well as Mr. Bernard Black, Senior Project Officer for CARICOM. We also have in our presence Shaquan Gill, University of Guyana Student Society President, the Council Member of the University of Guyana Student Society, as well as CARICOM Youth Ambassadors. It is an honor to have each one of you here today. I would also like to welcome and thank DEC, club representatives, performers, and students for their invaluable support. Without your contributions, this event would not have been possible. To our attendees, thank you for taking the time to join us in person and online. Your presence here is a testament of your commitment and interest in the advancement of the Caribbean single market and economy. We hope that this event will be an opportunity for everyone to learn and connect with each other. I would now like to invite the University of Guyana Student Society President Shaquan Gill to give brief remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator, our distinguished guests, our lovely CARICOM Youth Ambassadors who have joined us from the shores of so many islands. I wouldn't take the time to mention all of them, but I want to say a special welcome to you. Some of you, again, being here in Guyana, and we are truly blessed to have you. Miss Michelle Small, Mr. Bernard Black. The privilege has always been ours to support the development of and the continuation of programs and projects that we recognize can ultimately benefit the students of the University of Guyana. And in an effort to contextualize that position, I wanted to share with you just a few things on how we got to this place after having the lovely invitation by Ms. Michelle. When this UGSS Council assumed office in 2022, we assumed office at a place where the university, unfortunately, suffered severely because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It meant that the vigor of students that once was there somewhat dissipated because of the lack of student involvement, the lack of student activities, as a result of the fact that we had to socially distance and push everything online. When we assumed office, we made a commitment that really and fundamentally said that in our term, we want to bring back extracurricular activities that will support the development of our students. So what did that mean? When we hear extracurricular activities, usually we think sports. And so we did a lot in terms of cricket and basketball and things of that nature. But we recognize that there is an academic or an extracurricular side that is outside of the regular course program that our students have on a daily basis. And so you would have a student doing maths and English and based on what they're specialized in, chemistry and things of that nature. But important components of what they're supposed to be dealing with, the things that will ensure that they understand the decisions that they're going to make, those things were somehow vacant. And so we made it somewhat mandatory on council to make sure that everything we do is done in collaboration, not only with private sector, but with government and with regional authorities that can support the work that we wanted to do. And this is testament and forms part of that commitment to make sure that our students have an opportunity to learn from you all. I have had the opportunity, and I can say that without any attempt of being untrue, I have learned a lot from just being in the presence of you, the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors. I remember our time just a few months ago at the CARICOM Secretariat, where we spent a lot of time discussing matters on climate change and on health. And it was through that collaboration, through those conversations, that I believe a lot of things were birthed and will continue to be birthed. And so we want this project, we want today to be a continuation of that. The question that we must answer today, apart from those that the panel will be discussing, is how can we as youth come together, irrespective of our nationality, irrespective of our race, irrespective of our orientation, irrespective of our ethnicity? How can we come together to make sure that the Caribbean community, the Caribbean region, is one that is bolstered with economic advancement, one that is bolstered with unity, cohesiveness, and togetherness, and one that can see all of our young people thrive and achieve every single thing that they hope to achieve, because we've created that regional integration. And so with that being said, with those few remarks, I hope that today we have a truly insightful session, one that we can share ideas and share our views and our thoughts on this matter, and find ways to make sure our young people can benefit from all of the initiatives and projects that our forefathers even set out for us when CARICOM was first founded, even to today. So thank you so much for being here, and I truly wish us a delightful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Gill, for the brief remarks. Now, I would like to introduce our first presenter for today, Ms. Michelle Small Bartley. Ms. Michelle Small Bartley, an experienced, thank you. Ms. Michelle Small Bartley, an experienced associate applied psychologist, has been a key figure in the formulation of policies, programs, and change initiatives. Her focus on social and organizational development and change has been instrumental, creating an enabling and conducive environment for youth development, improved employee performance, satisfaction, and development. Her passion for strategic development and a need for organizational synergy and efficiency led her to become involved in modernizing Jamaica's public sector and transforming the education sector, Jamaica Customs, and other public bodies. Michelle is a liberal thinker who views the status quo as form of mental imprisonment. As such, she pioneered leadership and change management workshops for top management, introducing innovative approaches to drive change and fostering a culture of innovation. Her training equips senior leaders with practical strategies and tools to navigate modern business complexities, lead with agility, and inspire their teams for sustainable success. In addition to her professional work, Michelle has lectured at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels at the University of the West Indies and other offshore universities. She has also contributed to the establishment of registration and standards for higher education institutions in Jamaica. Her previous role in CARICOM Secretariat allowed her to design and implement sustainable programs and a policy framework for regional youth development. Michelle is currently pursuing a PhD in social policy at the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies, UWI. Beyond her professional endeavors, Michelle takes pride in being a mother of four. She believes that motherhood is the most essential function for her as a human being and finds immense satisfaction in nurturing and shaping her children's mind, as well as those of young people she engages, a role she considers of utmost significance. It is my honor to invite Ms. Bartley Small.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm not going to be standing behind the podium. I hate standing behind a podium. Can you put it in slideshow, please? Thanks. No, my presentation today is really about the CARICOM Youth Development Program. the CARICOM Youth Development Program, and I will tell you a little bit also about our Youth Ambassador Program. I'm doing this specifically because you are in Guyana and you need to know what is happening at the CARICOM and as it relates to you as young people, okay? All right, good. So, and I need to be at a strategic point. No. So what we have here is that as a youth program, we focus on children between ages, or young people between ages 10 to 29. We seek to empower young people across the region. And so what we do is engage them at the national level and also at the regional level, with specific focus on social and economic interventions. The CARICOM has two mechanisms that we use. You want to control it for me because this doesn't seem to be functioning. Okay, so it's, oh, so it's me. All right, so the CARICOM has two mechanisms that we use in order for us to empower and engage our youth, and that is the CARICOM Youth Development Action Plan and the CARICOM Ambassador Program. So I'm going to take you through a little history because, and you here in Guyana might know a little bit about this. In 2007, the Conference of Heads actually came together, and what they discovered is that there were issues that was happening across the region, and we still have some of those issues now. Issues like crime and violence, unemployment, the need for sexual and reproductive services, etc. And so what they thought, that if you're supposed to do anything, it is supposed to be informed by data. And so they asked for a comprehensive research to be done. And this research was actually done looking with the intention of improving the status of youth across the region. It was actually done and it was put in a document of which further helped us to make a declaration in terms of what exactly the CARICOM was supposed to be doing now for our young people. And so we have what is called a Declaration of Paramaribo for the Future of Youth that was established in 2010. From this, an action plan was developed. This action plan actually identified 6 specific areas that I will go through with you in a few minutes. 6 specific areas that we will seek to address to help our young people, to empower them, and to help them to become more engaged and more developed. So, looking at basically what I was saying about the CARICOM Youth Development Action Plan. So the purpose of it really is to improve the quality and quantity of access and opportunity available to young people at schools, in communities, and to have them as active participants, both in economic development and national and regional development. Also, it operationalized the Declaration of Paramaribo that I would have mentioned before, and it provides a policy guide for the development of national youth policies across the region. So what the document actually intends to do is to help youth directors to develop a policy that will guide their youth development. Then lastly, to promote youth mainstreaming and youth integration. The common cry is always that young people aren't involved in the things that are happening, the things that are affecting them. So what happens is that we try to promote youth mainstreaming where they will be a part of that discussion to engage them in policy and decision making. So I'll just briefly go through the objectives really are fostered around the purpose of the declaration and the action plan. And really it is to create an appropriate institutional framework. And as I mentioned before, it's really to deliver the whole mainstreaming agenda, etc. And it is there as a guide to effect in order for us to deliver effective and efficient programs for young people and adolescents and for mainstreaming. It is there also to foster genuine participation. Young people will always tell you that they feel like they're tokens. They're just invited to something because, or the people want to say that, oh, we just want to add them to the list that young people were there, but they don't really have a voice. So essentially what we want to do is that this document actually helps in terms of how we do effective engagement. Also to ensure that investment is made for young people and to guide the development of sustainable regional research and information that will actually feed into developing programs and to foster youth awareness and appreciation of the Caribbean identity and culture. So I mentioned earlier that there are 6 areas that we have a focus on, and these areas are as follows: education and economic empowerment that enhance the quality of life and the livelihood of opportunities for all adolescents and youth. Protection and safety, and what it does, it enables the creation of a protective environment to foster resilience and to ensure adolescents and youth safety and security. So when we talk about crime and violence happening across the region, we have it here in Guyana, we have it in Jamaica, we have it in all the countries across the region. When we look on those things, what is it that we are doing to protect our young people? The research will tell us that young people are both perpetrators and victims of crime. So these are some of the things that we have to look on. Health and wellness, improve the health and holistic well-being of adolescents and youth, and culture, identity, and citizenship by enhancing the development and appreciation of the Caribbean culture and identity and the commitment of regional integration, which is partly one of the things that we will be talking about today. And also for policy and institutional framework, creating the policy and institutional environment and mechanism that will support national and regional implementation. And also to look on leadership participation and governance. So our work really is about building the capacity of our young people, ensuring that they have the capacity to lead. Because, of course, and I've always make this statement that young people, they exist today, but tomorrow, a younger person will be replacing me. Well, hopefully not literally tomorrow, but sometime in the future, someone will be replacing me. Someone will be replacing the prime minister. Someone will be replacing the president. So we have to build the capacity of our young people so that they can take on that responsibility and take the baton and move on. So one of the things that you would have mentioned, if you're paying attention, I would have said that a research was done in the declaration was done in 2010. How many years is that? How many years? 14 years ago. What has happened 14 years ago? Since 2010? In terms of what is happening to youth in the region? Let me hear from you.
In terms of, Lord Mike, in terms of being included at different levels, and for those youth departments who are being guided by the CDAP as well, integrating the work of youth in their policies.
Anyone over here wants to, some change that you would have seen over the past 14 years?
Over the past 14 years, I saw a lot of changes in the youths in terms of participation. I can talk about Guyana for sure. There were more youth involvement in terms of capacity building and everything that actually contributed to their well-being as a youth.
Thank you. And I'll just add that look at the environment. Climate change is even more than it was before. Crime has increased significantly. We have the digital age has actually been increasing as well. So things are more electronically and digitally produced. So of course, we have to take into consideration the nuances and the development that is happening within our social and economic space. So what we have done, being cognizant of this, we have actually undertaken a revision of our CDAP, which is the shortening for the action plan. We have undertaken that revision, and so that revision started in 2022, where we did a number of consultations across different youth groups, as well as our technocrats at the national level. We also engage with our international donors, and so we realized that there are things that we need to address, further address. And so within another year or so, you will have a document, a new framework that will help to guide the things that we're doing and strengthen the mechanisms that are in place. Also, one of the things that from the consultations that we did, we have recognized that there is need for a CARICOM Youth Development Index. What is a CARICOM Youth Development Index? We have our Global Youth Development Index that will actually tell us where exactly we stand, what exactly is happening across global, the countries across the world. What we need to find out in order for us to know if we're growing as a region, if we're growing as a country, then we need to know what is happening. We need to know if crime is actually decreasing and there are less young people involved in crime. We need to know if young people are gaining access to the health facilities that are necessary. And so this index will actually help us to track all of that and inform us of the things that we need to do. Now, just to highlight a little bit of the work that we have been doing, so we have focused on our mental health or psychological and emotional first aid, and this is a program that will involve youth workers and youth leaders as we move forward. It's in the process of being developed in terms of the curriculum. We have our Aspiring Youth Empowerment Program, which we had quite a number of Guyanese involved in that program who have actually established businesses from the two cohort of persons we had. Our climate change and health projects that our young people are actually engaged in. Recently, we had Tobacco Awareness Forum, and we had our youth summit last year where we built the capacity of our young people across the region, looking on gender-based violence, crime and violence across the region, and building their social and emotional skills. So, what exactly are those persons who you see there, the ambassadors? Who are they? And before I even go on, let me pick the minds of the persons who are here to find out what is it that you know about the Youth Ambassador Program in CARICOM. Can I have a volunteer instead of me just picking on someone?
So basically what I understand about the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors Program is that various, I want to say enlightened, for want of a better word, young people are selected from the various Caribbean countries and chosen to represent them at events such as this to lend the youth perspective of those countries to important things that will shape the future for them. Best way I could put it.
And I'll ask them, is that your purpose? Was he correct about that? Huh? Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I'll say a little bit more than 55%. But let us explore. So there are really three strategic imperatives here of the program. Regional visibility, which is to maximize regional visibility and impact. National visibility to maximize the national visibility and sustainability to ensure effective and the sustainability of the program. However, it is also a mechanism that the CARICOM uses to facilitate youth participation. So you are correct, and partnership across looking on regional integration process, both at the national and regional level. So we use this by looking on various areas, which I would have pointed out earlier. The program is actually coordinated by CARICOM, and this is one of the questions that I'm often asked by Guyanese. Why is it that we don't have Guyanese CYAs? The CARICOM Secretariat coordinates the program, but the program is actually facilitated and administrated by the member state. So we're not the ones who select the persons. Persons are nominated and that information is sent to us as a secretariat. So the vision really is for young people in the CARICOM countries are knowledgeable about, contribute to, and benefit from regional integration, and their voices influence regional policy making. And the vision here was actually written by the young people themselves to educate young people about and encourage their participation in regional integration and development, and advise policymakers on formulating policies and develop programs which address youth needs and concerns. And these are some of the guiding principles that you will see enacted by our young people. So who exactly are these persons? We have a total of 15 member states and 5 associate states. Ghana is one of our member states. And so there's a total of 40 young people who will be representatives of the group. And you'll see some familiar faces there. So what we have a male and a female from each country. Here we have a picture of our St. Lucia male, who is actually sitting right over there, and our female from Trinidad and Tobago. And so we have a male to balance it off. Gender equality, we have a representative of both. And they address the issues, and this is exactly what you just said. They address youth issues at the national level within the regional strategic framework. And they are bringing national issues to the attention at the regional level. So this is sort of repetitive, so I will skip this. So essentially what our intention is to build the capacity of our young people. If I give you a task to do and you don't know how to do it, what would be the purpose of that? So our intention really is to build the capacity of the young people so that they can actually take on the mantle and do what they're supposed to do, that they can advocate on behalf of other young people. So this week in particular, they're actually here with us to learn more about the CARICOM single market and economy. How are they learning? Not only from sitting down around a desk and a chair, but by going out in the field and learning more about the things that are happening, the processes that are being undertaken. And this is just highlighting some of the participation in terms of things that they would have achieved over the years. So they have been involved in various projects, both at the national and the regional level. And what we have young people who will actually sit on committees and boards across the region. We also have young people who will actually sit at the national level on boards to carry out certain functions and for their voices to be heard. Now, my final slide, and you must be saying amen to this one. Be the change you want to see in the world. Gandhi said, as a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change toward him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do, but we be the change that we want to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that insightful presentation. For example, myself, I did not know much about the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors Program, and this is my first time being exposed to such information. And I hope that other youths aspire to become a part of this program as they grow. One thing she mentioned, and it's a quote that me and my colleagues use a lot, is be the change you want to see, or what the change starts with you. And that I carry with me, and I hope each and every youth carries with them as we go on. So now I will have a sweet melody from Miss Trishant Semple. I do believe she deserves a bigger clap than that. And steel pan does make you feel closer at home. And it is one of our best instruments. Me, as a past steel pan player, that instrument brings the Caribbean back to you if you're far from it and just listening to it. Also, this performer, or most of our performers here today, is from the University of Guyana Students Performing Arts Club. So if you have an event and you would like to book some performers, and Mr. Santos Semple, who performed the steel pan, you can reach out to them, and I have their contacts afterward. Now we will have and now we will have a brief presentation from Mr. Bernard Black. Mr. Bernard Black is an international trade and customs specialist with over 25 plus years experience. Bernard joined the St. Lucia Customs and Excise Department in 1982 and quickly established himself as a dedicated, trusted, and hardworking officer. During his 25-year service, he successfully completed a bachelor's degree in business management at London's South Bank University 2000 and a master's degree in international trade policy at UWI Cave Hill Campus 2006. He is now a regional trade professional who is committed to promoting inter-regional trade among CARICOM countries. A graduate and an enthusiastic professional with proven leadership and management skills and abilities in professional and social environments. Bernard handles multiple tasks as well as demonstrates great adaptability to change. Always focused on the solution, he is a problem solver with an ability to mobilize resources towards arriving at sustainable solutions. Bernard has a talent for creating uncommon yet simple solutions for lingering problems. Having a desire for continuous personal growth, he is constantly engaged in self-development activity. He is a hard worker with the ability to work efficiently in teams. He is organized, hospitable, and responsible with an honest disposition, and displays an excellent service spirit. These qualities have enabled him to develop excellent communication skills and a reputation for reliability and a preferred positive attitude. On the lighter side, Bernard is an active person, sports enthusiast who socializes well with people, a dedicated husband and father of 3 daughters. It is my honor to invite Mr. Bernard Black.
So like my predecessor, my colleague before me, I will stand on this side and go through those issues. So I have some talking points here that I will go into some detail of each, but these really represent the trading goods issues of the CSME, which is my area of competence. So I'll just go through a few of them. And I suspect as we get into the panel discussion later, we may have to revisit some of them. All right, so before we get into that, I'd like to engage you in a small icebreaker or quiz. The whole idea of the CSME is to take us to a point of regional integration. We've heard about that expression before. And regional integration has 4 steps. It started with step 1, we're now heading into the final step. Can anybody tell me what any of those 4 steps are? In any order? Volunteers.
Okay, so I think it's free trade area, customs union, economic union, and political union. That's the final one.
Okay, you're close. Anybody else? There are 4. He gave 2. All right, so in 1974, I'll give you a hint. In 1974, it started with one of those 4. Can anybody tell me? Maybe some of you were not born yet. Yeah? So in 1974, we started with a common market. All right? So with the common market, countries traded with each other. We set up rules by which that's supposed to happen. We decided not to charge each other's goods customs duty on import into our countries. We started a rules of origin regime. And then we moved to another step. Can anybody tell me? We're actually in that step now. Well, you touch it, a customs union. All right? So the customs union, building on the common market level, we made the decision to have harmonized customs laws. We have already done that. The laws have been approved. What we now have to wait on is for the member states to pass them into local law. And so far, only one country has done so, which is Barbados. So it is progress, but at the same time, we are way behind our schedule. Okay, so we move to the next step. Anybody can guess the next step? We hear it all the time. We hear it more than customs union, actually. Single market. All right. So the single market, just like the previous step, builds on where we were as a customs union. And we are adding things like the arrangements within the customs union to make our single market work. So we're talking about free movement. We're talking about contingent rights. We're speaking about public procurement, consumer protection. All of those are additions to the customs union that are stimulating trade and the movement of resources within our trading space. So we come to the final step. Our final step, anyone? You touch it, okay? Which is the economic union. The economic union builds again on the last step, but it includes our commitment to our economic and financial commitments. And the biggest deliverable we all were hoping for is a single currency, all right? And all those arrangements that have to do with our finances. So now that we know where we are in the regional integration scheme of things, let's have a look at those instruments. So the Common External Tariff, CET, is our biggest trade policy commitment. We are all committed to it, and the Common External Tariff looks at a broad issue of matters, a broad scope of matters. It looks at our productivity as a region, what are the things we're producing, and the policy set up in such a way that what we are producing is critical to the mainstay of our trading goods program. So we have a protection system of the goods that we produce. We want those goods that we produce to go into further production, into value-added goods. And we have some other policies that strengthen the way we do business and treat each other's imports. Okay? Now, the Common External Tariff has two sections. There is the tariff structure. The tariff structure, those of you who know what a customs tariff looks like, that structure is based on a world standard of the World Customs Organization that tells you every 5 years, these are the descriptions of goods laid out in those chapters and those sections of the tariff. So our tariff that we use in CARICOM is actually identical to the tariff used in the UK or anywhere else in terms of tariff structure. The next part of the CET is a rate structure, which is the rates that we apply to the goods that we treat in our region. And the rate structure is decided upon by our ministers of trade. Those ministers sit on a council called COTED. And so they're the ones with the final say in terms of what rates are applied. Generally, the rates have been the same over the past 10 years. There are a few instances where requests are made to change those rates or to suspend them temporarily, but the rates by and large have been the same as we go. So just like the CET, we have rules of origin. The origin rules delve more into what processes goods must go through to qualify for CARICOM origin. And once that qualification has been met, it means that your goods can be traded free of duty from one country to the next, right? By and large, it works well. What we see evidence of is that the goods that are produced in CARICOM, where there's no duty charged into a country, cost just about the same as goods coming from outside CARICOM. So that rings a bell in our minds that the people who are trading in our regional goods are not passing on the lower prices that they get because the duty has been waived. So there's a big issue about that. Trade officials are trying to figure out a way by which to bring this to the attention of the public and to develop a strategy to combat that. Now, we have harmonized customs laws, which is what I pointed to earlier at the customs union level. Our laws are done, we've implemented, we've passed it into as a decision of the community, but only Barbados has implemented those laws. The other countries that are soon to be doing that are Belize, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica. We hope the others follow soon. But what the customs laws intend to do, colleagues, is that it builds a level of predictability with our trade. And what we see happening is that companies that start in one country are moving to other countries. And the biggest example of that is the Massey Group. Massey is almost everywhere in CARICOM now. So what the Massey leaders want to see is when goods arrive in Trinidad and Tobago, or goods arrive in Jamaica, or goods arrive in Barbados, the same procedures apply at the border. So if the clearance time is 2 days or 36 hours, that level of predictability is what business people depend on so that they could sell their goods and services. So the CET, based on the HS 2022, I mentioned earlier, is a world customs standard, and it is upgraded every 5 years. It's modernized or revised every 5 years. So in 2022, the latest version was implemented. And so far, 4 countries in CARICOM have implemented the harmonized legislation, the customs tariff: Barbados, Jamaica, Belize, and St. Vincent and Grenadines. Okay, the others are working on it, and we hope that they could get there soon. Now, as part of our contingent rights policy, contingent rights essentially means that a citizen of CARICOM of one country can go to another country, either temporarily or permanently, and enjoy the same benefits that nationals of that country are entitled to. So it means healthcare, it means education, the opportunity to work. Okay, so 2 elements of that contingent rights policy is tools of trade procedure. The tools of trade procedure essentially saying that any professional or craftsman can take their tools, the tools that they use to earn a living, and transfer and go and live in another country and take those tools with them and not pay any customs duties. Okay, so a person like an electrician, he may have a generator, power drills, different bits of equipment. Under the tools of trade policy, he can move to another country with all his tools and not pay any customs duties, right? That procedure is being done right now. A draft has been laid out. What we need now is a consulting group to actually go and assess exactly what steps are to be created to make it work. Similarly, the simplified customs procedure, our customs heads in CARICOM, they meet once a year at the CARICOM headquarters, and they have agreed that there should be a simplified procedure, a procedure that everybody does, that is predictable, that will get around the documentation of a normal procedure. Okay? So we're moving towards that, and essentially what we're looking at is a procedure that involves goods for private use below $100 US. So those of you who import contact lens, for example, or small items for personal use, there's going to be a special procedure to attend to all of those little nuances, those little things that you import on Amazon for yourself and not for commercial purposes. Now, CARICOM has realized that the trade ministers or the trade officials on their own cannot make the trade move. You need to have private sector involvement. So the CARICOM Private Sector Organization, called CPSO, they have been recognized by our heads of government to be present at the table when matters are being discussed that relate to trade. Okay? So one element of the CSME is that additional group of problem solvers are now at the table and things are moving much better. We have frank and open discussions with the private sector officials, and they like being at the table. So we believe we are in a position to improve trade and to reach solutions that benefit everybody, especially the consumers. And then the last item on my slide there is called the SIM-SUPRO. SIMSUPRO is an acronym that means CARICOM Interactive Marketplace and Suspension Procedure. That's a long name, but the SIMSUPRO was developed in Suriname by the Office of the Vice President some years ago. And the SIMSUPRO is essentially a marketplace where you go online, and in that location online, there is a database that contains the goods of all goods made in CARICOM. Okay? So just like you go on Amazon, you want to search for something, you go on to SIMSUPRO and you search for a regional product on that list. The CPSO is helping us to develop the SIMSUPRO. There are over 1,000 companies in CARICOM, and the idea is to get all of their goods posted on the SIMSUPRO. We have goods there right now. If you go on your website, simsupro.com, you will see the portal. But it's not operating because the database is not yet complete. So we want member states to complete and insert the goods on that list. Question?
I was just asking, what is the timeline for the completion of it? Because this seems like a very good idea, and it gives a lot of small business access to larger markets, especially here in the Caribbean.
The timeline has passed. We've extended it, and it's about to pass again. So what we're going to do this year is to do a CSME outreach specifically for the SIMSUPRO. We've targeted 8 countries, and we're going to Trinidad, Jamaica, and Belize first, because among those 3 countries, there are 90% of the companies in CARICOM. So we want to attack the bigger companies first, countries where there are the most traders, and then we'll finish off with the others. So the new timeline is at the end of this year, well, November, when the ministers meet again, so that we can tell them we've completed the outreach, and now we have 900 companies registered, essentially. All right? So if any of you are creators, if you know anybody who's producing goods, have them to register on the SIMSUPRO, because once your good is online, it's on sale to the world, not just the Caribbean or Guyana. All right? And it doesn't cost you anything. All you need to do is to upload a photograph of the product, like you see on Amazon, a few photographs in different angles, give your name and address and contact information. Right?
Sorry, I just wanted you to clarify if it's just goods or also all goods and services.
For the time being, it's goods. Focus on goods, but we want to improve the SIMSUPRO as we go. One of them is with services. Another element of the SIMSUPRO is to make it e-commerce friendly. It's not e-commerce friendly. We're still trying to develop an e-commerce protocol in the CSME. Those of you familiar with your revised treaty, Article 239 has undertakings of 5 things to be done in the future. One of them is a protocol on e-commerce. And the CSME office in Barbados is working on that, Mr. Preville, among others. Okay, so I decided to add a few items to that list. We have something called monitoring mechanisms. The monitoring mechanisms have been put in place for us to keep an eye on the growth of certain commodities within CARICOM, because they're important to some countries. And when our member states seek to get those goods from outside CARICOM, it can create a problem. Okay? So the first item on our monitoring mechanisms list, we have 4 of them, is rice. The rice mechanism is working well, generally speaking. But what we see happening with rice is, although more and more people are buying regional rice, there's a growing number that is buying rice from outside CARICOM. Okay? And the trend is the countries that are towards the North Caribbean are the ones more likely to buy rice from third countries. I don't know why that's the case, whether Kititians and Antiguans prefer Uncle Ben's rice, and people down in the South prefer Caribbean rice from Guyana. But that's a trend that we are seeing. So everybody's happy, so it's not a big issue. Red kidney beans is another monitoring mechanism. Belize is the only country producing red kidney beans, but it's an item in demand. A lot of countries are using it, especially at certain times of the year when certain cuisine is favored. So the monitoring mechanism, Belize has indicated to the whole of CARICOM that they are producing red kidney beans twice a year when they have the harvest in certain time frames. So if you want to buy red kidney beans, you should get it from us instead. And the quoted supports that. Generally, that one works as well. And Belize is doing its best to keep its red kidney beans in production when it's needed. We have a sugar monitoring mechanism, which just started. Belize again is a main player. Guyana also. All the countries that produce sugar are giving a commitment to supply sugar regionally. And so Quoted is monitoring the production and supply of sugar by the submissions member states make to us twice a year. And the latest one, well, there's a suggestion that we started, is with cement. Cement is a peculiar situation in that the 3 cement producers in CARICOM, one in Barbados, one in Jamaica, one in Trinidad, are owned by the same company, but they are managed independently, right? And sometimes the ones that produce the cement don't produce enough for themselves. Like Barbados at one time tried to import cement from outside Barbados, okay? So cement is very important, especially because we are in a hurricane belt. Most of our countries are. Whenever there's a hurricane season and houses get destroyed, there's an urgent need for cement. And so people want to get cement in big quantities and small quantities at any time of the year, right? There are some countries that are going on aggressive economic expansion, like Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda made the decision years ago to build all its secondary roads out of concrete. Some countries, most countries do secondary roads out of asphalt, or they leave it exposed. Antigua and Barbuda is going the concrete way, and they need concrete every day of the year for that to happen, okay? So I shall stop by talking about careers in trade. Students, you need to know a little more about this. Now, University of the West Indies, Caville campus has a master's degree program in trade called the MITP, Masters in International Trade Policy. And it started in 2004. So every year they take on new students. Every year there's a new cohort starting in September. So if it is that you want to make a career out of trade, please consider the MITP. I did it myself. I was in the second cohort in 2005. And it has a very broad and comprehensive set of courses that you can do. And all of these courses are facilitated by internationally recognized people. Okay? In the case where there isn't a regional expert, one is brought from outside to come and facilitate that course. Okay? What I notice generally is that the qualification that develops into good trade officials is economics. It doesn't mean that economics is the only one, but as an economist, you have a better absorption of the issues of trade, because really economics is about finding efficiencies in the areas where demand is most needed. That's the general concept of economics. And that's what trade is about, trying to get the goods to where they are meant to be going with minimum disruption and as quickly as possible. So I shall stop here. I think we're going to get into more of the items in the discussion, but we'll take a few questions if you have any, in the interest of time. Thank you. Okay, so we don't appear to have any questions. If any, we'll take them at the panel discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Black, for giving those insightful information. Now we will have a rendition, Silpan rendition by Mr. Shanta Sample. Thank you again, Miss Sample, for blessing us with your wonderful talent. I do believe it deserves another round of applause and a big one. Okay, so now we will head into our panel discussion. I'd like to ask all panelists to have a seat on the stage. Yes, you got it. Yes. Okay.
So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this segment of this afternoon's proceedings where we will be having a panel discussion with the CUIAs and the University of Guyana students as we are on the topic of advancing the CSME, and we'll be incorporating a youthful perspective. So, starting from my right, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself, what you are studying, and why you are excited to be here this afternoon.
Sure, thank you very much. Good afternoon to each and every one of you, to heads of members of the table, to my fellow colleagues. Welcome and good afternoon once again. My name is Alicia Samaru. I am the president of the Economic Society. I'm also a fourth year graduating very soon student. You have to say not pure economics, but my degree is in business economics. I'm also a counselor at the Ecos Ramsburg NDC and the chairman for Social and Welfare Department. I am versed in so many areas. If I continue, I may take up all this time, but I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for having me, and I do look forward for a pleasant discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our distinguished guests, the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors, UG students, everyone watching at home. My name is Tyrick Scott. I am a final year, graduating very soon, if UG grades allow, law student. I volunteer with several organizations, UNICEF, Guyana and Suriname, Desert Flower, Global Youth Biodiversity Network. I don't have the time to list every organization I'm a part of, but I do believe in advocating and using my energy for good. So I'm looking forward to participating in this panel with the lovely, educated CARICOM Youth Ambassadors and my fellow UG students. Hopefully we walk that stage soon. So yes, thank you all and looking forward to the discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Samantha Rampasad, female CARICOM Youth Ambassador for Trinidad and Tobago. I am a soon-to-be graduate, So I studied management studies and political science, and I work heavily with youth within my local communities and at a regional level.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Andel. I'm the male CARICOM Youth Ambassador for Grenada, CARICOM Petite Martinique. I'm also the Vice Dean for Regional Initiatives and Partnerships. I'm not currently studying anything. However, I'm looking to start my MBA in International Business at the St. George's University. My profession, I am a digital marketing and artificial intelligence consultant and associate.
Okay, so thank you everyone for the introductions. And I know for our audience, you're seeing these people sitting on the stage and it's looking like you're watching television. However, you all are invited to participate and give your contributions. So as young people, we understand that our government and our heads of state, they oftentimes frame policy. But there is this growing issue where the policy is framed and no youth is included. We are always included after the fact. So to start this afternoon's discussion, I'm going to ask the first question, which is, what policy frameworks could be established to allow youth of the CSME to thrive in an environment that encourages and promotes innovation? Who would like to go first?
Thank you again for allowing me. So in terms of policy frameworks, the first thing that comes to mind for me, being a student at the university, by extension, a Guyanese that has gone through the system, the education system, I will first focus on an education policy framework. Now, why do I say this? It's because our education system, and more so, I guess, as we go through discussion, we may discover it's probably the same thing in many other countries in our region, is that we're so focused on just the core subjects that we do not have enough room to include innovation, technologies. And this comes back to the policy framework, where we need to actually create fiscal space. And when I say fiscal space, we have to have a budget allocation for the education system to focus more on innovation and technologies, to encourage our young people to strive where they are most wanted. Because what you would notice is that not every one of our kids are so intact with the maths, social studies, science, and the core subjects that you know. We have everyone who develops at their own time. They blossom at their own time. While you may think we have a slow learner, that person might be the person that has the skills, the technology to be creative with their hands and their minds at something else. But do we have the framework to entertain them in the school system? No, we don't. So I will definitely focus on expanding the education sector.
And it's interesting you said that, because we live in the Caribbean and the norm is, you have to go to school, get a certain amount of subjects and just spend the rest of your life in an office work. And it oftentimes, we have this negative connotation towards skills trade, when in actuality, innovation cannot be achieved if we as young persons don't have the skills. So I really appreciate your contribution. Anyone?
Thank you.
Okay, Joshua?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone again. And I said I wanted to go right after my colleague because I believe that what I'm thinking, we kind of align in our thought process, because she's thinking about the education sector, but I'm thinking about after the education sector. I believe that we need to have a budget allocation for the entrepreneurs, because just by a show of hands, how many of you inside here ever had or currently you have a business idea? By show of hands. How many of you started it because you had the money to? If you had looked around, you'd see so many hands drop. And I believe that is because the funding to support these startups and small entrepreneurs are not there. So I believe that frameworks, when it comes to allocating budgets for grants, tax incentives, and also fostering collaborations with universities and private sector organizations to provide some sort of mentorship for our entrepreneurs would be extremely great when it comes to starting.
And not just mentorships only with the universities, but also involving the private sector to see what really is in demand and how we can better equip our youth, and then frame going forward from there. One of the things we would have discussed also is having gender balance within that policy framework, because it's so important for us, as well as incorporating the use of AI. We would really like to see some more work being done on that as well.
Okay, great. Anyone from the audience wants to add anything? Anyone from the university or even or CYAs? Anyone wants to add anything? Going once, going twice, and we are moving on. So I love how we touched on innovation, because innovation and creativity somewhat works hand in hand. As young people, we are innovative in ourselves. We always bring those fresh perspectives to certain situations, to certain projects. It's just always an amazing sight when we sprinkle that youthful touch. So as we continue, the next question I'm going to ask: as a growing sector of the regional creative industry promises to provide long-term career benefits for cultural practitioners. Now, my question is, what measures could be considered to encourage CSME youth to participate meaningfully in the regional creative industry?
So the regional creative industry, it's no secret that it does hold immense potential for young people to find long-term career options if certain measures are taken. One of those measures could definitely be, as a region, we can implement regional grants and scholarships for young people who want to pursue careers, because so often, like in Guyana, we hear we're boxed into, oh, you got to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. And you don't see many people getting the chance to explore their creativity in Guyana or across the region. I believe the regions are now starting. But you don't see much people getting the chance to explore their talents and find a career in their talents. Their talents are more of like a side hustle or a side hobby. So definitely establishing scholarships for those, giving people the opportunity to feel like this is something they can actually do and not something they must only be able to do on the weekends, and they can make a 9-to-5 out of this. And then also we can start promoting our Caribbean culture globally through our digital media. Like today we had our steel pan player that's going to reach the live stream across the Caribbean community, which is what we need to do, because now that young lady can go forward and use that to get herself a career, get herself gigs, etc., which I believe she should get, by the way. To anybody who's watching, please book that young lady. But yeah, we can definitely do more to show our young people that, hey, your talent, your creativity, it's more than just, oh, this is something you picked up on the side. This can be your life if done correctly.
One of the things we also need to focus on is allowing young people to understand the opportunities that are available to them. Traditionally, when we think of the creative sector, we more or less think about music. For Trinidad and Tobago, we have carnival. So how do a young person who's involved in costume making take their brand from just the local communities of Juve and then, market that to the regional space? But we also have to look towards intellectual property rights. Are we teaching young people how to go about that entire process? Because many of us have discussed the concern of having your ideas stolen from you, especially when you don't have such a you don't have the capital to invest going forward. So those are one of the measures that we want to look forward to. And perhaps at the national level, we can also find a way in which we can integrate local youth within the regional space as well. I think that's a great place to start.
Okay, great. And while you pass the mic, I appreciate the fact that you would have started with taking your talents and turning from a side hustle and capitalizing on it, because we are experiencing now that people who are talented, it's almost like they have to struggle to get the exposure that they need, or even struggle to monetize their talents. And Samantha, I took note that you touched on intellectual property, because in the Caribbean region, that topic in itself, it's a very somewhat taboo one, because when our judges are faced with the opportunity to make landmark decisions, such right in Tobago, we had a show on Karuta against the THA when his song was used in a Blue Food Festival. When it comes to intellectual property, sometimes artists, their products, their creation is not protected. So how can we as the youth now, how can we be on the front line to ensure that when a young person creates something, that it is not just stolen or used in the wrong way? So I appreciate your contributions, Joshua.
Yeah, so thank you again for asking that question. I must say you're doing a wonderful job in tying the questions together. And I must also add that there's a level of cohesion when it comes to the panelists, because essentially what I'm going to say would be kind of like a summary of what they just said. But I do believe that education programs should be implemented in our member and associate states, because the problem is that our youth don't understand that there are other career paths that you can go to or aspire to get into besides the traditional lawyer, doctor. And that is something that we know as youth who are in the creative sector. So I believe that education programs to teach them how to get into the creative sector, but not only how to get into the creative sector, but also, how to maintain it when you're in the creative sector, how to create your business, all of that. I believe it's extremely important. And I also believe that we should look at establishing regional platforms. I know CARIFESTA is one of the initiatives that we had. So I believe that's something that we should be able to, aspire to continue to do.
So added to what my colleagues would have said, and he touched directly on what I really want to say. So I began my discussion by saying we need to touch on the education sector. Now, when it comes to the creative arts, how many persons do you know graduate with a degree in dance, a degree in music? Well, we hear about the music industry is always up there, but we have dancers, we have actors, and what is the struggle for them to receive the kind of education that they need to propel them to the next level? Now, my colleague here would have noted some intellectual rights. Who's going to teach them that? Who's going to mentor them that? So what I'm saying, we need to bring it down to the education level. Start to nurture them from little. And this is why I'm saying education. Bring it back, bring it to the school system, integrate it there, and then take it to the next level. Because as I mentioned before, we have human beings among us who's not just, they're just not excited to sit with a book and a pen all the time and take notes off of a blackboard or a whiteboard. We have talent out there that is just waiting to be nurtured. And how can we do that? How can we recognize that? It's by nurturing them from little, putting it into the education system. And as you go along, you teach them the intricacies of it. You teach them how to be protected as they go forward. Everything today, even with the sports, I mean, that's another topic, but we have to find a balance when it comes to youth and empowerment.
Okay, great. And moving on. So I'm from the island of Tobago, and we have these types of vegetables called ground provision. So it's something you take out of the dirt, you boil it, and you just eat it. It's not tasty. It's not really. It doesn't have the best look. But we have been noticing that our youth, they are taking this ground provision and turning it into things like wine. We now have cassava flakes. But when you walk into our international supermarkets, you are not going to see those cassava flakes. You wouldn't see those wine and all those sorts of innovative creations. But if you walk into one of the grocery stores in the Caribbean, you're going to see a box of Lucky Charms. You're going to see a Honey Nut Cheerios. How are we going to get our Caribbean identity or Caribbean products into the international market? Because as we're talking about the CSM, we're talking about the free movement. How can we ensure that or goods that we create as Caribbean people that they enter that export market? So my next question is, what efforts can be further developed to allow CSME youth to make meaningful contributions using food technologies to develop value-added foods for regional consumption and export?
Well, I'll tell you this. While I was sitting there, our presenter, if I'm correct, Mr. Bernard, he mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, Carimpo? Yes, Carimpo, yeah. I love that initiative. It's a baby yet, it's not completed, but why I love this initiative, it gives us all in the region an opportunity to put our goods and services out there in the market. I visited Trinidad and Tobago the other day, and I was so surprised to see just a few items from Guyana. But in Guyana, you see so many products from Trinidad and Tobago here. And the question often arises when you visit your family members. They would want you to bring kasrap for them, tennis rolls, and so on. Why can't we get it there? And even if it's available there, we don't know where to pick it up. So here with this initiative, I would push that particular initiative and encourage our young people to to create, continue to create, package, and it all comes back to a blend of government initiatives and private sector initiatives. You have to encourage them, create incentives for them. Because one of the big problems is, I know for certain, it's funding. It's not easily accessible. Funding is not. Many a times when you see there's a grant available, there's a whole list of things that you have to produce before you can even get it. We have to come down to the small man. A lot of persons are suffering from mental illness, but that person is so creative. That person may have that same idea for that wine, but guess what? When you put all that paperwork before that person and tell them you got to do all of this before you get some cash to create and put your product out there, what are we doing? We're crushing them mentally even more. We're shutting the door at them. I mean, I'll give it over to my colleagues now. Give them a chance.
No, yes, please give her a round of applause. Listening to you present about that makes me feel like going home and making some cassava flakes myself, girl. Anyways, one of the other big parts when it comes to regional consumption of products is the fact that processing and packaging is very important. And that's something that the United States has always been the best at. They're very good at advertising, marketing, processing, and packaging. Because for the Caribbean, for some reason, we've become so accustomed to this idea that everything we need to label with our Caribbean flag and slap our flag on the product and shit. And that's good for regional integration and education, but I've never seen a red, white, and blue box of cornflakes, but I still buy cornflakes from the United States. So if we can find a way to incorporate processing and packaging into our food security related degrees, our agricultural science, etc., from the secondary school level right up to tertiary, I think that would go a long way in not just enhancing food security, but creating jobs. Because like my colleague was saying, the government can introduce grants for persons who can produce the best design for local products and thus give them an incentive to really work hard to create a design and not just slapping a Guyanese flag on some tamarind balls and saying, Merry Christmas. So definitely improving processing and packaging education. I know this is not as motivational a speech as that. Very hard to follow something like that, but just improving processing and packaging education and general more consumption of regional products.
I will also add to that sustainable packaging as well, because climate change is a real thing that we're all unfortunately facing. If we could have some incentives and allocations, particularly for youth entrepreneurs when it comes to exporting local products. Look, I don't know if you've been to the grocery recently. I've seen where we're now making dal puri and freezing it, and we have it locally. So why can't we export it? You know how much for dal puri in the States? It's real expensive. I was there recently. They're now cutting up dashing bush and exporting it. Why can't we get that into the international markets? Because we're trying here regionally, but our Caribbean identity is so very unique and our products are so high in demand, yet we can't find a way as young people to integrate within that sector. So I think, if we can have some incentives, particularly for young people, and then when we look back at the Caribbean region, are we even starting the conversation on genetically modified foods? Not all of us inside here might be farmers. I really love the idea of agriculture. I support it. We have a few products. But let's be real, after you do your manicure and pedicure, you really want to be digging yam in the yard? Your hands, pedicures, right? So perhaps you may not be the one that's driven to be a farmer, but you might be very technical, tech savvy. So why not partner with a local farmer to see, hey, what are you producing? All right, so instead of we just boiling this yam, can we make flour out of it? But then we can pinpoint another issue. Do we have the facilities as well? So we have quite a lot of work to do, and I guess that's why we're also here as panelists to bring them forward. So if we're talking about integrating young people within the region and at the international market for exporting, these are some real issues we also need to be looking at.
Yeah, thank you again. I'm the last panelist, so I'm going to be summarizing. But there is a level of cohesion because for me, I would come back to what my colleague mentioned, funding. There's a need for funding, and I'll put it in one word. We need to prioritize our youth. And there are several ways we can do that, but one of the main ways when it comes to specifically agriculture, I would say we need to prioritize our youth by supporting research and their development initiatives and offering creating creative incubators for agricultural startups.
Okay, nice. Really, really great responses. Audience, before we move on, anyone would like to pose a question to our panelists? Anyone? Jalen, you are usually the one asking all the questions. You have no questions? Okay, interesting. So we're finally at the end of this panel discussion. Oh, Marissa, you want to ask a question? Okay, we have two questions, great.
Hi, good afternoon. So as previously mentioned to my CYAs, climate change is on the rise. And with that, of course, there's shortage of food, and farmers are now looking at the reality that certain crops are not so resilient, to say. I would like to know what's your take on genetically engineered products in the region.
So while that may not be my area of expertise, I would say looking forward, and exactly as you mentioned with climate change and planting of crops and its resilience, we definitely need to start having not just conversations, but taking the steps forward to actually exploring genetically modified food. And I know as Caribbean people, sometimes we tend to be a little bit reluctant to the idea of it because we're thinking about chemicals and how it's going to impact your hormones and what are the health levels. But most of these things have been done before. It may not be in the same exact packaging that we're currently discussing it here as, but it's been done before. The cereal and cornflakes that you eat, it's been processed in some way or the other. And so there are certain standards as well in terms of when it comes to food and production of it that it will have to go through. So let me just bring the young people to this particular point. Don't be too scared to explore the idea. Explore the idea, do the research on your own and understand it fully before you just outright say no. Because climate change is here, it is happening, and we do need to find sustainable measures to survive. That is if you plan to survive the next 30 years or so, which I plan to. So thanks so much, Marissa, for that question.
We have another question.
I have a follow-up question on the same genetically modified foods. Now, as a health professional and knowing what is contained in a genetically modified food, DNA, we have growth hormones, different hormones, and how it can alter the human body over time. Do you believe that with implementing genetically modified foods within our within regional development, what is your point of view, or what should be the role of the health sector now to combat any challenges implicated from genetically modified foods?
Yes. Yes. I'm just gonna throw this out here. I'm not 100% for the idea, but yes, I do recognize climate change and what's happening. And what I would say is that we have, as young people, we're always open-minded. There are other ways in which we can do research, and research is something very key for any initiative, any innovation. We have to continue to study and look into other ways in which we can survive as people. If we decide to go down that line, there's a lot of implications. And for the health sector, what I would have to say is that it will be probably 10 times more work for them, because we already know what plastic pollution does. We already know we have a lot of cases of death, a lot of cases of illnesses from plastic pollution that was never even discovered. We just know that our people die from cancer, they die from diabetes. But if we are to do in-depth research, we would see it's coming from something else. And the thing is that we can now, as a people, young people, who like myself, who don't like to get my nails dirty, I don't like to dig up the dirt and go down like the farmers, but there are other innovations available. Utilize your space. Instead of taking all of your land space and creating big, huge buildings and pools, take a piece of your land space and create a green garden for yourself and your family. That's my take.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for your response. When it comes to the health sector and their role when it comes to GMOs, I would start by, of course, asking this question. And don't be afraid when I ask the question to give you a true response. Raise your hand if you know what GMOs, if you have any idea of their existence, what they are, just raise your hand. Now look around in the room. If you have any idea of GMOs, just raise your hand. If you understand what they are, the effects, look around in the room now. As you can see, not many individuals have a great understanding. So I would say that for the health sector, they need to collaborate with private and public entities to use educational campaigns, digital campaigns to educate our youth and by large our population on the benefits, the negatives of when it comes to this specific topic.
Thank you very much. We have another question.
Hi, good afternoon. So coming back to the climate smart agriculture and GMOs, agriculture, genetically modified foods. So what we would have done here in Guyana, one of the initiatives that we would have done, it was started by 5 females. We have a shade house project. It's called the Agricultural Innovative and Entrepreneurship Project, which is basically where we have university students who are either finishing their degree in agricultural science, but also those who want to learn how to cultivate crops, but under climate smart conditions. And not only we use like the common crops, but also uncommon crops like broccoli, and we have beet and so forth. And what we do after that, we have them in an area, we send them to GSA, or we have a facility at GSA, which is Guyana School of Agriculture, where they have a facility that you can have students go and modify, or they can go and basically like do wine, like we were saying, wine and so forth. But the biggest problem that we have as persons, as a Caribbean, all of us may have ideas, yes, but not everybody may be receptive to the idea that you have. We have to be open-minded as Caribbean persons, because not only your idea may not be ideal for you, but it might be ideal for another Caribbean country.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, I know mental health plays a major role, and before anything, we must understand clients, customers, students, educators, everyone actually, right? So, before we can do anything, I believe that is a key aspect in going forward, understanding one person, one perspective, and then moving forward. But what I understand is that I've been listening, and most of the statement I've heard is that incentives, finance. So my question is, how do you go about gaining these finances? How proactive are you? Of course, with a personality, a people personality, right? You're able to merge with any companies, any stakeholders, whether it is private or public, basically. So how do you plan to move forward or being proactive in getting these fundings? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So, indeed, you would have mentioned mental illness and so on, and we would have talked about implementing incentives and grants and so on. So, I would have mentioned earlier that we do have grants available, but the criterias are the list is so long, we basically shut the door to our young people. So my idea is that as young people, as young representatives of the region, is that we have to have a sit down, have the opportunity to sit down with our stakeholders, with our policymakers, to give them the view of the young people. Now, as representatives of the region from different countries, how many of you, if you don't mind me ask, were able to sit with the government and represent your people, your young people? Tell them about the cries of the people. Tell them about what is really happening with your young people and be able to make a change. How many of you have been given that opportunity? You can show your hand. Good. So we had like 3 hands go up. Here's my point. We have a lot of programs. We have a lot of initiatives for young people. But how far does it go? How far does it take us? And it all falls under big headings. But do we really get the opportunity to represent our youth to the higher forum? To really bring issues, as what she's saying, to the forefront? Because now we have grants available. We're going to encourage the private sector through our discussion to make the incentives and the grants available. But how will we do this? We have the systems killing us. We have to bring it to the forefront that, listen, young people don't even have half of the experience to go and get a compliance done. We're always calling, hey, do you know what? How do I do this? How do I do that? We have to have systems in place, like having mentors along the way. Have systems like mentorship for them. Teach them the procedures. While we're begging the government or asking the government or the private sector to give us this, give us that, we also have to have mentorship in line. As I said earlier, not everyone has the mental capacity to even be bothered with that long checklist, and not just be bothered with it. How many of us are afraid that we checked the wrong thing because our application may be denied? So again, as youth representatives, we should not just be under a big heading, under a big name, but we must be able to push further to have our voices be heard. And guess what? If you don't get it heard at your forum, there's so many opportunities out there. Like, I'm challenging myself to get out there on social media, not just to browse TikTok to see the latest dance or the latest meal, but to start to encourage more young people, teach them simple thing like I was mentioning earlier, how to get a compliance. What is the procedure? And these little systems here, these are requirements that are needed for grants. But our young people don't know how to get it done. How do we solve the problem? Yes, grants will be available. yes, yes, incentives will be available, but we need the education of our youth.
Just to further the point in relation to the proactivity of young people, as a person speaking on behalf of several youth organizations, I can let you and the members of the public know that these various organizations, included but not limited to, excuse me, including but not limited to the Rights of the Child Commission and UNICEF, what we normally do is we normally have stakeholder meetings, like Alicia mentioned. We meet with our stakeholders and we ask them, what is it that you think can be improved by your country? Stakeholders, of course, being the young people. And what I started, in addition to several of my other youth volunteers, we started an initiative where we reach out to various communities, not just young people like us who can gather in this room, but communities that might not necessarily have that access, like the hinterland, etc. And we try to get their perspectives at every meeting to ensure that when we're implementing these policies and gathering funds, we're not just gathering funds for us and what we believe in, but we're taking every idea from around our country and we're making it applicable for everyone so that every child and every person, every young person can benefit from our initiative. So there are things in place. They might not be publicized as yet. And I really hope I didn't just reveal any one of my organization's plans, but there are methods and initiatives that are coming out very shortly that will address those issues of proactivity and getting young people's voices heard and ensuring that everything that we plan and everything that we discuss doesn't stay in the education lecture theater of the University of Guyana, but it gets to where it needs to go.
I'd just like to add a little bit to what my colleagues would have said and to your question, but not particularly when it comes to the financing aspect. Very often, young people say that our voices aren't heard. We don't get an opportunity to speak to our ministers. We don't have a seat at the table, but y'all keep forgetting that you can make your own table. Stop waiting for people to approach you and you approach them. There are various mechanisms in which your voices could be heard. How many of y'all are on Facebook? Just lift your hands where I could actually see it. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. How many of y'all have made a post, posted a picture, made a reel? How many of y'all made a reel about an issue that you're facing? Lift your hands higher. Now look around the room. You have a voice. It's just for you to find a way for your voice to be heard. So within Trinidad and Tobago, coming back to the financing aspect, our government heard us. They didn't really have much of a choice, if we're being honest. And so now we have grants for young people, youth entrepreneurs, up to 10,000 TT dollars that we can access. Another issue that we face is young people, and I'll take my time to say this one and be very cautious with my words. Very often, we like things in an easier manner. And sometimes we don't necessarily put in the work that we need to do in order to access something. I know how tedious a form could be, but listen, if your business idea is so great, then you need to invest in it and do what you need to do. Sometimes the onus is on us to educate ourselves in order how to access that grant. It's not going to just fall into your hands. You're not going to wake up one morning with a business idea. Hey, I want to move my business from Trinidad to Guyana, and your fairy godmother is going to bring it to you. Trust and believe, I know how difficult it is, but as young people, we also need to put in the work for the opportunities that we want and make sure that your voices are heard.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, I really like the fact that you kind of call us out because it allows the individuals who are here and who are online to understand how we're thinking and how proactive we are as youth advocates. So I would answer this question on two levels, as an individual and as me being a youth advocate and ambassador. So starting with an ambassador, what I'm going to do is that same question you asked me, I'm going to go back and I'm going to reflect and I'm going to ask my other ambassadors within my country, how are we going to address this? How are we going to get the youth to understand that there are funding opportunities out there that you can access? So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to advise policymakers, because as a CARICOM youth ambassador, that is one of the roles that I have to do. I have to advise policymakers. And if this is something that I have to advise them on, then trust, I will do that. And on an individual level, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to research. I'm going to find out what grants are available out there in the Caribbean or on a larger basis, so that my friends, so that my youth can be able to access this to use and start their own businesses.
To the question with the GMO, you guys, I was listening attentively and I realized that a lot of person they are actually against GMO. However, GMO is not actually, I wouldn't say it's harmful or it's not good. It is good in a sense that it does not attract a lot of pests and disease. Crops that are GMO, they does not attract a lot of pests and disease. They grow faster as it opposed to the natural crop like they would attract a lot of pests and disease and so on. So I think they are using GMO as an alternative to supply the world. And the Caribbean, which is considered small and contribute less as it relates to uh, carbon emissions and all these other stuff. And my friend right there would have experienced a tremendous hurricane, which affected the Caribbean in a very tremendous way. Not only Grenada, but I think Jamaica, as well as some parts in Trinidad, if I'm not sure. St. Vincent, right, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. How does the Caribbean, how the youths in the Caribbean actually respond to this from an agriculture standpoint? How do we actually tackle the issue of GMO and natural foods on a large scale? That's my first question. The second question is, how does core Caribbean and peripheral Caribbean, in terms of size, the ones that have the land space as opposed to the ones that does not have the land space to actually grow these foods, tackle the issue of food insecurity as it relates to GMO? I would have done my thesis on cauliflower, which is relatively new to the Caribbean, and we would have received some relatively good results. What we find is that the crop it requires a cooler season to grow. I don't know, I know for Guyana it's very hot all year round most of the time. I don't know for other Caribbean countries if it is that they are cooler, if it is that we can maybe orchestrate a project to grow the crops in the cooler regions as opposed to Guyana, or try to, alter the environment, because we would have done it in a controlled environment, somewhat under shade house conditions. And like I said, we would have gotten some favorably good results. How does the Caribbean actually respond to tackling the issue of providing for the Caribbean and the world at large? Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just target your first question. How do we, the youth, tackle GMO on a large scale? For me, I would say it's collaboration. We have the CARICOM Youth Ambassador Program. So I believe that the main thing we as youth need to do, not only ambassadors, but you all who are here and you who are learning now about GMOs and the benefits, the negatives, etc. I believe that we need to collaborate with each other to spread awareness so that other individuals would be able to understand. Because if you look back to when I asked the question, how many individuals inside here understood about genetically modified foods or GMOs, you would see that the hands were extremely minimal. So I believe for me, we should tackle GMOs on a large scale through collaboration.
And just to add, I like that I mentioned earlier in my presentation or answering the questions that we need to start having the conversation about this. And we can see that the conversation has started. And while most of us here in this room aren't able to fully answer the questions that you're asking, it really gives us something to go back home and we have some homework to do and be better equipped for you all.
And to tackle the second part of your question, which relates to food insecurity, right? To tackle the second part of your question, when this issue was discussed with the British High Commissioner in May, we had talked about alternatives to the current crops that we grow as a method of tackling food insecurity, educating persons on those crops that are, I forget the term that they use, but those crops that are sustainable through harsh weather conditions. So that would be one of my suggestions for tackling food insecurity.
I would like to also chip in for the second question on food insecurity because I personally have a climate change and health project that's funded by PAHO through a collaboration with the CARICOM Secretariat at the CARICOM Youth Ambassador Program targeting food insecurity, where essentially we're going to be in Grenada, we're going to be teaching individuals how to create small-scale, affordable greenhouses. So we're targeting youth farmers, we're targeting individuals who are learning about agriculture, so community farmers, and also those who are learning agriculture, whether it be through an associate's degree program or a CXC program. So, I mean, going back to your question, how would the Caribbean, or how we as youth in the Caribbean target food insecurity? Again, I would say through collaboration, partnerships. We need to mobilize the partnerships and collaborations that we already have, which is something that I'm doing, which is something that my CARICOM Youth Ambassadors are currently doing through our climate change and health projects. So I hope I answered your question.
And just to add to your first question about how do we tackle GMO on a large scale, just two answers I can briefly share with you is that it calls for international collaboration within the region, and it also calls for investment in scientific research. That's my 2 cents.
Michelle, you have a question?
No, I don't have a question, but a comment.
Okay.
So I'm going to piggyback on what Samantha said earlier, and I didn't catch her name. Alison? Alicia. Just to mention for the benefit of those of us who have often complained about youth not having a voice, youth not being brought to the table. And I've been hearing this over the years. I've been in youth development for years, and this has been something that has often been said. And I will redirect you to what Samantha said, that sometimes it's not about being brought to the table, but creating your own table, creating your voice so that it can be heard. One of the things that we have consciously been doing in the Secretariat is to ensure that we get the voice of our young people from all levels. Hence, one of the reasons why we're here today in the University of Ghana, because we want to hear from you. We have had other forums where we have actually invited marginalized youth, where we have actually invited youth from the disability and other youth from other areas where we want to hear your voice. But it is not only about hearing the voice of our young people, but it's also about collectively creating that mechanism for them, an enabling environment. And that is not something that happens overnight. And this is one of the things I want to say to us as Caribbean people, that we live in an environment that needs our input in order for us to grow and develop. It's a collective effort. It's not an effort where we sit back and we look and expect other people and expect the government and the prime ministers and the ministers to do it all. They need our help. And so I think it's time for us to get up. And Bob Marley that said, get up, stand up for your right. It's time for us to do that. And we need to actually be a little bit more assertive in the things that we do. The government will hear us, but we need to allow them to hear us. Because if we're going to be aggressive by using placards and those things, then they won't hear us. What channels are we going to be using to get our messages across? And these are some of the things that we need to think about in a more constructive manner. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I have one question, right? Now, you spoke about accessing loans and how it's extremely difficult to have that funding for youths, young adults, etc. So I want to know, what would you change for youths to be able to access this loan?
Well, I think from listening to me earlier, what I've been putting out there, most of the discussion, what I would definitely change is that long list of criteria. I would definitely change that and make it a little more, yes, we have to, as young people, as young entrepreneurs, we have to work hard for what we want. But sometimes we have to make things a little more accessible. And I keep coming back to the point of mental illness because it hits home for me. I have dealt with persons who are tired mentally, who have struggled, who have been through the systems. I have sisters who went through CSME, who are success. But guess what? I can also tell you the struggles that they have faced to get where they are today. I have a sister who, through CSME, went to Trinidad and Tobago. I have a sister who's in Antigua and Barbuda through CSME, but it was not easy. And the reason why I keep stressing mental illness is real. We have so many institutions, so many workshops, so many things that advocate for it, but does anybody get to the meat of the matter? We have so many long criteria and requirements just to get a loan, just to get some finances, we have people who have such brilliant ideas, such brilliant innovations, but they can't read and write. Yet we have a long list of requirements for them to meet. How do we tackle that problem? For me, I would squash that. Come back to the drawing table. We need mentorship for these people. We need help for them. How do we help that man that is so successful selling coconut water to get his product to the market internationally? How do we help him? And guess what? He's very good at it, you know. He may have the best method of packaging it, but how do we recognize him? We tell him, hey, brother, you know, you could just go to the bank and get a little loan. But guess what? Brother don't even own certain documents. I can tell you here in Guyana, we have a long list of things we have to submit before we get $300,000. And that is change money in this country. I'm being real. I like to be real with people. I like to tell you as it is. We have to go back to the drawing board. We have to look at what we have been doing. As young people, yes, we have our voices. I agree that we need to put our voices out there. But don't get me wrong. At the moment, I have a summer camp for kids from 4 years to 16 years of age. I am personally facilitating the 11-year-olds to the 16-year-olds. And you know what is crazy? Each of them own a cellular phone. Some of them fancier than mine and more expensive than mine. And all they know to do is play music or scroll TikTok. Amazing, isn't it? When they're given an assignment to do, oh, I got to get a computer. No, you don't. It's right there. It's accessible. So as a community leader, as a youth ambassador, I teach, I educate, I motivate. I literally hold your hand and help you to get there where you need to go. And some of them are so surprised at what they have inside of them. They didn't even know what they have inside of them. And this is what I say, but we need to help the youth some more. And I'm literally teaching them how to use the platforms that they're scrolling every day to make their voice heard. Make the TikTok videos. I'll teach you how to remove that fear from you and speak out loud. Public speaking is something our kids don't want to do because there's a fear inside of them telling them, no, don't say that, you're wrong. Only yesterday I told them, I said, listen, when you hear that voice, tell that voice to shut up. And you just say it. There's nothing that you can say that is wrong. Express yourself. And this is what I'm saying. It comes back to us as leaders. Proactiveness, someone mentioned that earlier. That is being proactive. Get on the ground and do the work in your spare time. Yes, we're tired sometimes. You know what? I love to go on the ground and do the community work. Anybody can call me at any point in time and say, Mr. Samaru, how can I do this? How can I do that? Some big people, older than I am, who have been in the system, but they don't know. I'd be like, you just go on this website, go here, do this, do that, and guess what? They're the happiest people at the end of the day. Thank you.
God, if Martin Luther King was ever reincarnated into a person, it would probably be you, I didn't realize that this became a presidential run. Well, I have to go after you. You know that, right? All right. So, following that impactful presentation, one of the points that you touched on that I agree with wholeheartedly is the fear of public speaking in young people. Young people do not have that, some young people do not have that ability to just sit down on a stage like the four of us and advocate for points. Some of them, they have the most wonderful ideas, ideas that could change the course of their country, but they'll never be able to express them because of that fear of public speaking and advocacy. So one of these solutions that I would propose is implementing advocacy training, which is actually what I had done personally as a community leader and youth volunteer. I had started a program called De-Stress and Express, where I was teaching young people how to advocate and do public speaking. I'm actually continuing that starting in a couple weekends. And I was amazed at the stories I heard about these young people as we got closer and did the sessions. I was amazed to hear how well young people can speak if they're just given a forum where they don't feel like they're judged or pressured, and how well they can articulate if they're just given the space to be themselves. So definitely implementing advocacy training, giving young people that opportunity and the platform to let their voices be heard without jumping over them and saying, yeah, but, and just letting them do their thing. I believe that'll change the course of the country, of the region exponentially.
All right, thank you. So we'll take Joshua's response and then I'll wrap up the panel discussion in the interest of time. But Samantha, you have something to say? Okay, keep it very
Brief.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to answer your question in terms of what we would change in terms of accessing the loan. I think the list is important. It might be very tedious, but it really, you require certain qualifications before you can access a loan. And so it's a business at the end of the day. I can understand some of it really is overdue, as we would say. However, one of the things that I would like to see is perhaps if we can have a representative walk us through the entire process. An open door policy where you can come in as a young person and sit down with a loans officer, for instance, and talk about what your idea is and see how best you can work hand in hand with that individual in order to access your loan. And at the end of the day, it's a business for them. So it's me working with you, and together we can achieve our common goals as one.
Yeah, so thank you for that question, Mr. Moderator. I promise I will be brief. So what I would change would be the visibility of these loans, these grants. There are lots of grants and loans out there for individuals who want to start their business, but the individuals who need to start the businesses, they don't know about them. So what I would change is the visibility. I would implement some sort of digital campaign, since as we all know, many of us use our phones as social media. So I'd be able to reach you where you are, not go out of the way, but of course reach you where you are, which makes it a lot easier for me. And I must, big up the ministry when it comes to Grenada. Something they did, something they changed specifically for creative, were they implemented a Grenada Office of Creative Affairs, which spoke directly to creatives. If you are creative, they gave you tax incentives. They give you, it was easier for you to clear something on the ports. No, it was just amazing. And I love the fact that he did it because it speaks directly to your question, accessibility.
Thank you very much, panelists, and thank you to our youthful audience for engaging with our panelists. Now, Samantha, you and I both know that in Trinidad and Tobago, our Energy Commission, they did this excellent initiative on the topic of energy conservation, where they would have distributed these LED light bulbs. So you went in, you got your fresh light bulbs, and your bill dropped. So as the young people, my question now is, how can CSME youth be prepared to acquire the necessary skill sets to work in the region in growing energy sector? So when it comes to the energy sector, how can we as a youth, using the CSME, basically
convert my theory into actually benefiting. And so I think that's the first place that we need to start. We need to take on and talk about the factors along with, but I know for the sake of time, I will allow my colleagues to share as well.
To add to I would just encourage more incentives. Although, basically, once you have incentives, you encourage young people to work for something. Yes, they are benefiting, it's a skill, but we need to have some sort of incentives to motivate and push. Why I say this is because you study all the time, but you have to live. Don't you? How do we get to study? How many of our students are struggling financially just to get to a class? If we offer incentives, stipends, we can encourage our young people to push in the direction that they feel and they desire or urge for.
My brief suggestion would just be the incorporation of technical and vocational training in not just energy-related fields, but specifically renewable energy, because that is where the world is heading, towards a more renewable energy-based system. So I would incorporate that in the education sector to ensure that young people are adequately equipped to meet the demands of the future and thus are able to sustain the region for as long as they possibly can.
What do you have to say about it? Okay, so we appreciate the end of this panel and the fact our panelists for joining us this morning was a very healthy and discussion range well. So thank you once again. Let's hear it once again for
Thank you, Tanya, for sharing your knowledge of different questions asked. I do believe that after this event, we will still have more questions to be answered. So you can connect afterwards. Now we will have a poem from Miss Gabrielle Borges. She is currently performing our summer version.
Good day, everyone. My poem is entitled, I Am Caribbean. O child of CARICOM, born of Caribbean soil, raised on Caribbean spoils, where the garden of islands in toil, do you hear the glorious call? Call to serve God's greatest gift and champion the trials we endure. We, the communities, are the guardians of the sea. Camaraderie is our galaxy. So we hold dear our golden sands, and emerald green where the sea never lands. Because CARICOM is all of we, and all of we is one. Yes, 1 from 10 equals naught, and so is victory we sought. Nurturing the jewel children of the land, we taught our people to take a stand. We've been looking for sweetness to put inside a basket, and found the melting pot to be the whole market. So with one market and one economy, even gravity can't hold on to me. I am Caribbean. The sun controls my waist from the Congo drum and the steel pan. When the rhythm starts to bang, I have to clap my hands. Every fiber of the being exudes culture, even the minibus van or the hand of a planting man. Whether we on the sea or the mainland, no one can take the destiny out of hand. Chained together by history, CARICOM grants us unity to explore our diversity and opportunity. This is a community for all. We bleed sun, sand, and sea. CARICOM is the gateway to the future, and our success is an inevitability. Thank you very much.
To close off our event, we will have our program. To close off our event, we will have our photo pass by UGSS PRO Beverly Sales And that will bring us to the end of our program. I have been your host,
Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the close of this remarkable event, it is my honor to extend our heartfelt thanks to everyone who made the day possible. Oh, sorry, my bad. First and foremost, I would like to thank the CARICOM Secretariat and the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors for their invaluable collaboration. Your support and involvement has been essential in making this event a success. As the UGSS President mentioned, this forms part of one of our commitments to foster stronger relationships between Guyana and the Caribbean people. A special thanks goes to the University of Guyana Student Society Events Coordinator, Ms. Lorian Lewis, for her and her team outstanding orchestration of this event. Your dedication and hard work behind the scenes have truly brought everything together seamlessly. To the students, thank you for your active participation and enthusiasm throughout the event. Your engagement is what makes gatherings like this meaningful and impactful. I would also like to extend our appreciation to Ms. Semple from the Performing Arts Club of the University of Guyana for her amazing talent piece. Your performance have added a vibrant touch.
Yes, yes, yes.
Also to the young lady who have also did her poem, apologies, but thank you very much, that was very lovely. They have truly showcased the incredible talent within our Guyanese community. Once again, thank you everyone for being here and contributing to the success of this event. Let's continue to work together towards sharing goals and aspiration as young people of our Caribbean region.
All right. So we have some snacks at the back, some refreshments. Feel free to step at the back and take full advantage of that which was put up.